better going forward. But that's all I do. I'm not Rasputin talking about county policy or anything like that.
So can I just clarify, so it's not your intention to correct something during the meeting, it's something that you'll make a note of and address later?
Yeah. So, oh, go ahead.
But the chair can ask.
Oh, sure. So what usually happens, where the parliamentarians usually sit, is adjacent to the chair and behind them. And the reason why is so that the chair can discreetly turn around and go, what do I do now? And I can go, oh, well, you need a second, or there's not a motion on the floor, or whatever the situation is. But that's not how we're arranged here. And so it's kind of awkward for someone to shout across the room going, what do we do now? Because that's not, it's just not the right way to do things to do. Only if something is just extremely egregious would I speak up. Say, but I don't have standing in your meetings, so it's really not appropriate for me to be speaking. So when the chair asks me questions, then it's okay for me to respond. And if any of you have questions on points of order, you can address them to the chair. And if she doesn't know the answer, then she can ask me. And then I advise her, and then then the chair speaks to the group. But it is really unusual for the parliamentarian to actually speak during a meeting. You have this interesting layer of open meeting rules that also sits on top of what you do here. And that was one of the things that we noticed early on, is that the open meeting rules require that the votes that you cast be recorded by name. So that's why they do roll call votes. So we have absolute clarity on how you voted. But that's in the requirement of minutes for open meeting rules.
But we've never done, I'm curious. It's interesting to me that this has never happened before. Because we've been doing this for years, and I've never seen the roll call used except when it was unclear. So it takes more time during the meeting, and I'm curious if the rationale is we want to have shorter meetings then, and we're calling out the roll call.
That's probably not your single time though in these meetings, because it's maybe adds 30 seconds to the whole thing. But that's the requirement. So you have to record in the minutes how people vote.
And that's part of our open meetings legislation?
Yes.
Interesting.
My experience with working was it was a unanimous vote, we didn't vote. Anybody
Yeah.
then we did a roll call.
Yeah.
What's hard sometimes is when people are really soft-spoken, and so if the clerk can swear in a stack of Bibles that she heard everyone respond, then maybe that's okay. But I've seen votes in here where people didn't vote, and so it just makes it very clear, and it's very simple to do, and it makes it very explicit. And if anyone wants to know how any of their commissioners voted on something, then it's in the recording and it's also in the minutes. And also in voting, it's either aye or no, and an explanation is only required if you abstain. So if you abstain from something, you have to explain why. That's
What does president mean?
Pardon?
What does president mean as a vote?
It's not an option. There's yay, no, abstain.
So in U.S. Congress, they say president, but you
And-
can't do that in Putnam County.
I'm sorry, the work session, I understand you have questions, Mr. Strickland, yeah, but it's,
Come to the meeting, I thought.
oh, at 6 p.m.
No, I have to come from the 4 o'clock
Oh.
meeting, sorry.
I got it. Okay, yeah, so we're glad that you're here, but it's for the board to discuss only.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so,
Well,
sorry.
conversation with an
He's
issue.
troublemaker.
Yeah, sorry.
Conversation with an issue.
So another interesting thing about your situation is that there is a hierarchy of laws, and so there's state law, and then underneath that you have the county charter, which is really brief, and then underneath that you have your county rules, and then you have underneath that the parliamentary authority, which is Robert's Rules of Order. And the rules talk about when they can be suspended, and it only takes a majority vote. But what's interesting about those rules is that they are also veer into special rules, and those are where you are limiting people's core rights in a deliberative assembly. So your core rights is that you all get to have the right to speak, and you all have the right to vote, and you all have the right to debate, and you all have the right to be here. And And another core principle is majority rules. So in most cases, it just requires a majority to pass something. If you are curtailing rights, or you want to reconsider something previously passed, then that requires 2/3. And in your case, since you've got 5 members, it would take 4 of you to do that.
So just state law, county charter, board rules, fourth one again, please?
Your rules of order, which is your parliamentary procedure.
Thank you.
And the way that works is that you've got a bunch of stuff in the county rules, and those are actually, there's a lot of repeat in what you find in Robert's Rules of Order. And you find people doing that often, so, you know, everyone doesn't have to pack around one of these and memorize it. It's in a more brief format in your rules. And so there's stuff in there that you can find in here, but it's repeated in there. Any questions?
I don't understand why there would be a time when we would want to take away people's rights. What would be an example of that?
So calling the question is a form of taking away your infinite rights to speak. So, and usually this makes more sense in groups of 30 or 40 people where there's a lot of people in the room, and you've debated this for 10 minutes, and people are still going back, and it's starting to repeat itself, and you can sense that the body is ready to move on, and so then you can call the question, and what that does is asks the assembly if they want to stop debate, and that is curtailing people's rights to speak. And so if they vote by 2/3 to do that, then debate stops and you go to the vote.
So you would do that for the greater good of moving it along.
It's because the majority want to move along. And so everything goes back to majority rule. So if the chair has some question about something and she wants to get a sense of the group, she can say, you know, I don't know what to do about this. How does the group feel about it? How do you want to vote? And for procedural things, you don't need to do a roll call. But you know, if 4 of you believe something strongly and 1 of you believes something else, and that's how you vote, then that's how you proceed. So everything is really majority rule, and that's what it comes down to. So you never have a chair that's essentially a dictator. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. The agenda. So the agenda is not final until you approve it in the meeting. So even though you have one sent out that's a preliminary, that is really just advisory. And anything on there can be modified once it's presented, because you guys own the agenda, and you get to decide how you're going to spend the next 2 hours of your time as a majority.
So I'm curious about that.
Or yes,
Or what?
you said 3.5.
Whatever. I mean, we've got a lot of pent-up need. I mean, we've finally begun talking about things that we didn't used to talk about, and so there's some discussion going on. I'm not clear how to impact the agenda. I mean, I've been told, oh, it's okay to change it. I don't get how to do that. I think maybe it's because I've been a bureaucrat too long. Is there a form? Do I make a motion? I mean, how does that work?
Awesome question. I can tell you.
Okay.
So you get that's one of the first things you do in a meeting, is that the proposed agenda is put in front of you.
Right.
And this is not talking about the consent calendar. This is talking about all this stuff.
Right.
So if you want to drop something, or if you want to add something to the agenda, you can
Right.
say, I move that we add, you know, blah, blah, a picnic for the employees at the this summer. And then someone has to second it, and a majority has to approve it, but you can amend the agenda.
And is that okay if we haven't talked about the picnic 24 hours in advance?
Sure. You guys have amazing freedom to do things inside the meetings. However, once you have approved the agenda, then to change it later is to really reconsider something previously passed, and it would take a 2/3 vote.
You mean something in that meeting?
Yeah, so if you've got 15 things lined up and the evening is going really slow and you want to drop something, and we actually did this. Someone said, I move that we modify the agenda and drop item 7B, and then they have to be seconded, and then 2/3 would have to agree to do that.
I wish we would have had this before before, like at the very beginning.
Many people tell me they wish they had paid attention in high school.
You know what, they never told us we could change the agenda in high school. Robert and I are quite sure of that.
Yes, you guys own the agenda. Majority owns the agenda. If you want to play bingo for 2 hours, you can do that.
However, in this, should not be surprises following the doctrine of no surprises.
That's,
I say that we don't do that very often because I don't want to come to meetings and have a bunch of things added to the agenda that I haven't prepared for, so
but then how do we construct the agenda beforehand? Because I've got a whole list of things I've been trying to get on the agenda for literally years.
So you can forward them to the chair, and the chair has the responsibility in your rules of configuring
So
the
like
agenda.
write an email?
Sure.
Okay. So that's new information.
And is there any time limit on that, or just out of courtesy?
Well, you know,
Well-
as Mark pointed out, you know, it's best not to have surprises.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
if you could get it before the agenda is published, so it's on the
Yeah, we-
published one.
that's a week before.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, it would have to be like 2 weeks before, right?
We start working on the agenda the day after.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, the day after the board meeting. We start compiling the next agenda.
And if it's urgent, you know, maybe you get it on the next meeting. If it's not urgent, maybe it can fall to the next one. Or if you have a bunch of stuff, maybe, you know, if it's not urgent, you can spread it out. And then,
Because the other problem is that the staff, and this is maybe not a problem, but the staff has the timelines of what they have to get approved and done, so there needs to be space
So
for
probably
their
it would
stuff.
be right after the meeting.
Or as soon as
Decide.
you know.
Soon as
As
you
soon as you know. Now, who makes the decision? So, I mean, suppose the commissioner wants 15 things put on the agenda. Who makes that decision?
you, and then the group gets to decide on it. So if everyone shows up and you have stuff going till midnight, a majority of you can start taking things off. But it's a
But-
majority rule.
But you're also, are you also saying that if I give you 15 items and you look at them as a chair and go, well, we can do that in June, we can do this, and you don't have to put all 15 on the next agenda? Is that what you're, is that another part of the question?
That.
I would
too.
have a conversation and say, hey, you know, you're hitting us with a lot of stuff. People really don't want to stay till midnight. Is there anything on here that we can, you know, just sort of work it out? It's okay to talk about this.
But see, communication is a part of it. So my concern is that we as a board haven't talked about what we want to plan to do. Well, we've jumped right into structures that control what can be said and when, but we haven't talked about what are your concerns about what we're doing as a board. And so, I mean, I think it hinders the chair's capacity to be able to adapt because we haven't come together and communicated with each other, because that's really the most efficient way, the way we did, for example, the rule setting.
How about we talk about that under motions?
Okay,
And
great.
then we can talk about how you can get that done.
Okay.
The consent calendar should only be used for routine things that are not controversial. And it's a way of expediting meetings, so you guys don't have to, you know, take votes on a bunch of stuff that you're going to approve anyway. So that's why they're put on a consent calendar. If there are things that you want to have pulled off, all you have to do is say pull them off. You don't need a motion to pull it off. Anyone can pull anything off of a consent calendar. I would also do that when you consider the consent calendar. So there's actually 2 steps. There's a first step of approving the agenda, and then when you're working through the agenda, you come to the consent calendar, and that's when you say, I would like to pull 6D off. And it's like, okay, that goes into the next section. And then if anyone else wants to pull anything off, they pull that off. And then you approve the consent calendar by a vote, and that says that all the stuff you leave remaining on there is approved and you can move on.
I'm sorry, can I rephrase that?
Yes.
So we come to the meeting, we're looking at the agenda, I say, I want the consent 3B off, and Mark, because I like to pick on Mark says, I want 3D off, and so all I have to say is, I want 3B, it comes off, you say you want 3D, that comes off.
But don't we have to
And-
vote? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, so what he's saying is, we don't have to vote to have that off, we just request that it's off the consent calendar. And then what do you do?
So I would do that when you get to the consent
You can say
calendar.
that, so you don't do it beforehand, you do it
All right.
when you get to the consent calendar.
Because if you look at the agenda, there's, approval of the agenda, and then there's some stuff, and then there's the consent calendar.
So one person can ask for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be
Majority.
Yes, anyone can, when you consider the consent calendar, anyone can pull anything off of that.
And the
So
chair.
once we do that, then you said then the consent calendar is approved, that there, I missed
If
this
there's
part.
anything left,
Okay,
if there's anything
Okay.
left, you still have to vote on that, because, because there's has been some weighty things in the consent calendar that have been approved, along with a bunch of other stuff like minutes. So you still have to vote on it.
so then we would make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Yeah.
As amended.
Okay,
As-
as amended.
Yep.
So the way it has actually operated in the past is not quite like that. There have been items that I've asked to have removed, and the chair negotiated with me rather than agreeing to remove them.
You should have said, point of order,
Well,
excuse me, I am requesting it be off.
there was a whole bunch of stuff like that. All I'm saying is, so there is some cultural history of a different form of behavior, so I thank you for this clarification.
Yeah, that's very important, because you're gonna be held accountable for the stuff you pass.
Can I just give
Yeah.
a little bit of history as far as, so staff has some direction as to what can be on the consent calendar. So historically, there have been, things that are annual renewals of like fish food purchasing, which is $150,000, which is a big amount, but it's an annual thing, it's budgeted, it's just the contract. So are the commissioners okay with staff continuing to put those sorts of things on there, or, we're trying to, yeah. We're trying to make it so that it's, but not, well, this is really big, it's $150,000, but it's,
Fish, food, and gravel we're probably good with.
yeah, okay.
Sometimes I have asked, and maybe I need to reconsider this, but sometimes I've asked for things to be pulled off the consent calendar because I would like to draw more attention to it, if it's a good thing or whatever, and give that, like, talking about fish, when we had Steve Meske came up and he talked about the pens that they were, the grants. Now, it wasn't controversial, but I think it was a positive thing for the county that I just wanted more attention to, but maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe, yeah, maybe if the story is told in a different way.
And sometimes let the staff person know. Because,
Oh, I always do.
Because then they're thinking, I'm gonna get out of here, at this time.
If I do something like that, I've always tried to reach out to the person and say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm letting you know that I'm
Yeah.
doing this. So.
But that can be done during the consent calendar, correct?
Mhm.
You don't need to
Pull it,
off or
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, you can just
Say
comment.
something about it during the consent calendar, correct or not? Am I wrong?
Well, it sort of defeats the purpose of a consent calendar.
So pull it off.
Yeah, if you want to talk about it, pull it off. If you don't want to talk about it, make the meeting shorter.
Or you can pull it off in your commissioner comments. Sorry,
Or
comments.
refer to it in the.
Thank you, refer to it. Thank you.
The other thing on this is adjourning the meeting. So there was the famous meeting under the last administration where the chair gavelled the meeting adjourned, and you were only partway through the agenda, if I understand the meeting correctly. The chair can't do that.
Yeah, no
You
kidding.
guys own the meeting, and you own when you adjourn. So if you want to adjourn the meeting halfway through, you can do that, but it's got to be a 2/3 vote, I believe, on that, because you're changing something previously adopted. If the chair has to leave for some reason, then they just turn the gavel over to the vice chair, and you continue on.
When you say previously, what you're saying is when we agree to the whole agenda at the beginning, if we were to say, okay, I've had enough, we're stopping right now, that means the other ones that we had already said we were going to talk about, we're not going to talk about now.
Correct.
So that's why we have to have everybody's vote,
Correct.
2/3 of the vote. Okay.
Correct. And structurally, your business is kind of different than what you'd find like in a nonprofit, but the structure in Robert's rules is reports, and then unfinished business, and then new business. So unfinished business is stuff coming over from the previous meeting that you are going to finish in this meeting, and then new business is all the stuff you have on here, and then at the very end of the new business would be anything that you are bringing up for the first time as a motion.
And we haven't done that on our agendas, as far as I know.
So, you guys get to own adjournments.
Okay.
Madam Vice Chair, you would be stepping up if Nebaker walked out of the room.
Okay.
So,
So does that mean that we now actually vote on adjournment?
You don't have to vote on an adjournment. If you got an agenda and you've gone through everything, the chair says, is there any more business? And if there's no more business, then the chair says the meeting's adjourned. Because there's no more business.
So the chair can ask for, because there have been some, assertions and accusations made during some of the reports, and if the chair had said, is there further business, I'd have responded to those. But instead, the way the thing was structured, there was no opportunity to respond to those, and we were gavelled into adjournment.
So further business would be in the form of a motion. And that's what we're gonna talk about next.
So could you just repeat, you said, you talked about the order of the agenda.
Oh, yes. So in Robert's Rules, which is the underlying, so it's reports, and then the full thing is special orders. So if there's something you have to do that night, like elections, those would come under special orders, so that would come next. And then after that is unfinished business, which is business from the previous meeting that has to be addressed next. And then after unfinished business is new business. And new business is stuff that has been, that's on the agenda, and then new business, which is new business from the floor, would come after that. Unless you amended the agenda to rearrange the order.
And that's just the format that Robert's Rules, because that's not really been our format. We don't have a lot of unfinished business, or,
We've never had that.
or,
You've always finished your work, so awesome.
no matter how long.
That's
We're gonna talk about bringing something to the next meeting, right?
But you can do
I
that.
understand that as unfinished business means that you had a first reading and then you're doing a second reading, so.
That could be
Oh,
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Unfinished
yeah.
business, you have
Right.
But does that also imply that if we get down to a certain point, that we could ask for some of these things on the agenda to be continued, and that would be
Yes.
the,
And it would be a decision of the majority to do that.
okay.
Would that take a motion then?
Yes.
table.
Table is a specific instance where you want to rearrange things because something else needs to be done earlier in the meeting. So say you have like a special presentation and the guy, who's ever presenting has to leave, and it looks like things are running late and you have to move that up. That's when you table something and move something else up. The tools you have are postpone considerations of the next meeting, or you can postpone indefinitely if you don't want to talk about it ever.
And we've done that with the unfinished business, like we had the draft policy for the industrial revolving funds, and that's technically still unfinished business because we're gonna have a work session later on it. So we've done that with some things, just kind of like, we're not ready to, yeah.
So if someone says, I move that we postpone this to the next meeting, and then the chair will take a vote, and if the majority agrees, then you do that. The motion is what you do, is how you encapsulate all of your work in this meeting. So you got 315 pages of knowledge that you were given for this meeting tonight. The key things that you do as part of your responsibility is craft the motion, and then debate the motion, and then vote on the motion. And I know this gets a little murky because so much of this stuff is done for you to help you, but it's really important to understand what these steps are that you're doing. So really, there's no debate outside of a motion. There has to be something on the floor, and you can see that under the definition of discussion in the handout. So
I think there's confusion about debate and discussion.
they really are the same thing.
Yeah.
So a motion is how you bring business before the body. So what are the three magic words?
I move that.
I move that. And then the staff generally provides language for you, because for a lot of these things, there's a lot of words that have to be in there, and so they can, give this some thought. Actually, all motions should be thought out before they bring them to a meeting, because they're really difficult to compose on the fly. And so you say, I move that, and then you state what the motion is. And then it's seconded, and then the chair states the motion. And the reason why they state it the first time is so the chair understands what the motion is that you've heard. If you think of meetings where they don't write stuff out for you in advance, then it has to be made very, very clear what the motion is. And you don't have to say what the staff recommends you. They're providing you helpful language, which works for probably 80 to 90% of the the motions that you put forth, because it's something that people have been working on, and you just need the language to move this forward. But if it's something that you don't agree with, or you want to say it differently, it is perfectly your right to change the motion and state it differently.
Change it, not amend it.
No, because there's no,
That's-
Yeah, have a motion.
yeah, you have to have the
Before the
motion.
motion
Oh,
is
you
made.
mean before, I'm sorry, before it's made.
So, you see something on the agenda, that's not the way you want to do it, and hopefully you got a sense that other people feel the same way, and so you would state a motion that is different than what is written.
So
Because
when
you
we
do
were
not agree
talking
with
about
that.
appointments last time, and I made a motion to appoint somebody and nobody seconded it, but I could just say that, because I wanted to. I-
Yeah. Yes.
Anything you want to.
Once.
So then the motion is on the floor, and that's why the chair states it the first time, because that's a statement of what they have heard this to be. And you can correct that. It's like, no, Madam Chair, I didn't say that, I said this. And then, Teresa, the clerk can make sure that the language is down there correctly. Then you go into debate. So there's no discussion before you hit the statement of the motion. Then you get to talk about it.
So we all know what we're talking about, basically.
Yes, because if you start debating before there's a motion on the floor, you're actually debating something that hasn't been stated, so it really has no value.
I
Yeah,
have a question. So quite often we have staff presenting something to us, and what happens is there's back and forth. So what you're saying is, we only ask questions of the staff, we don't go back and forth with the staff, and we don't go back and forth between the commissioners before the motion is stated and seconded. That's when we have discussion.
correct.
But
So
That's very different.
But isn't there two different functions? Like when the staff is presenting something,
they're giving you more information in
And-
addition to what you have in your packet.
right, but does that mean, what you're saying, does that mean we're not allowed to ask the staff questions?
No,
Yes.
you can ask questions, you can ask clarifying questions. Is it-
Clarification only, but you're not going to opine and give your opinion on something or ask another commissioner something. You want to simply ask for more information or.
So if I say, so you're telling me that cats are allowed, and they say yes, and then, but I wouldn't hear from someone else. It's just, I get to ask a question this way, they give me information back, and then we move
Right,
on.
and it's all in preparation for the big moment when the motion is made. Right, so then the motion is made, and then you have something on the table and you know what you're talking about, or what is being considered.
Okay,
So that's when you know, and you're always recognized by the chair, so you raise your hand and the chair recognizes you and you speak. And then when the speaking is done, then you take the vote.
so, okay, let me go back a little bit. So when I'm asking Teresa if the cats are allowed at this picnic, and she says no, and I don't say, well, I think that's terrible, I think cats should always be allowed at the picnic. I love cats. No one is interested in that opinion at that time. But if I make the motion that cats should always be allowed at this picnic we're gonna have, then I can have discussion.
Absolutely.
No
Yeah.
discussion before the motion.
Right. And,
No tuna.
and the maker of the motion gets to speak first. So if you make the motion, then you can go on for, 5 minutes about how much you love cats. And
Okay.
then someone else can say, I hate cats, or whatever they want to say.
Okay,
Amending. So we got wrapped around the flagpole last time a little bit about amending. So any motion that is made can be amended by any of the 5 of you.
so if I make a motion, anybody sitting at this table can say, I'd like to amend that motion that you made.
Yes, and this is how the ball gets passed.
Except the chair, right? Can the
You,
chair
you,
amend it?
the rules state that you can fully engage in debate. So
But what about the amendment?
I think you can amend according to your bylaws.
But does the
you're-
motion have to be
I-
accepted first and then amended?
So let me explain the life of a motion. So, yeah, so let's say you move and Commissioner Thompson seconds. And then once the chair states the motion is then owned by the body. It no longer belongs to the maker of the motion.
Okay,
So it belongs to the body. And so anyone can modify it.
When?
After you state the motion and it's under debate. So So let's say you say, I move that we spend $500 on a picnic, and it's seconded, and the chair says, there's a motion on the floor to spend $500 on a picnic. Someone says,
Want to spend 1,000?
I want to spend, I move that we strike 500 and we replace it with $1,000. And then someone else seconds it, and then the debate is on the $1,000. Do you want to spend $1,000 or not? It's not whether or not we have a picnic, because that is the main motion, and you're now debating the amendment. I know some of the
And we
stuff
haven't
gets hard.
voted on anything yet. We've
You haven't
just
voted on
made the
anything.
motion and seconded it. Now we're discussing.
And you have an amendment to change 500 to 1,000, and that's what you're debating.
So if he says, I want to spend $1,000 on a picnic, does that amendment need a second?
Yes.
So if he says, I want $1,000 on the picnic, and she says yes, then do we have a motion about having a picnic, spending 500 or 1,000, or does it now become a picnic and 1,000?
So the main motion is, I want to spend $500 on a picnic, and the amendment is, I want to change 500 to 1,000. So you dispose with the amendment, and then after its disposition, you go back to the main motion.
Which has been amended.
It hasn't been amended until you vote on it.
But after
Until the
we
amendment
voted on it,
passes.
then we.
So,
Oh.
blah, blah, blah,
Okay.
yes, I do want to spend that, no, I don't want to spend that. Then you vote on it. If you vote yes, and you've changed it to $1,000, then the chair says, the motion now reads, we spend $1,000 on a picnic. Is there any further debate? Because that's the amended motion. If the motion is defeated, then it reverts back to its original form. What you did at I think it was the last meeting, someone tried to restate the original motion as a motion, but you don't have to go back to that, because you already have the motion and it's still there.
So if I can paraphrase what I hear. So making the motion establishes the issue to be discussed in whatever detail it has. Someone can make a motion to amend part of the details within the motion, the
Mhm.
issue, and we vote on that. And it either changes it or it doesn't. If it doesn't, it goes away. If it does, the major issues definition is changed.
Mhm.
And we keep doing that until we're clear about what it is that we're discussing. And then we get to the yes, no of whatever we have defined through the process of amending it or not.
Yes,
Is that it?
yes.
Thank you.
So then we come to when the chair says it for the second time. So after everything's done, then the chair states, let's assume that we amended it to be $1,000. So the chair states, the motion before you is that we spend, the amended motion before you is we spend $1,000 on a picnic. And then you vote on that.
And that has now become the main vote.
That's your main motion, and that's actually the most important one. It's the one that becomes the legal motion that goes into force, because that is actually the verbiage that you voted on.
Doesn't pass, then
Then the motion fails, and you go on to the next agenda.
we don't even go to the amendment, or to the one amended. What if they want to go back and approve the 510?
Well, then they would have to reconsider the motion,
Okay.
and it would have to be someone that voted in the opposite direction.
I thought it
They
was
would
the
have to move
same
to
direction.
reconsider.
I thought we could only move to reconsider if we voted for it in the first place. I thought I remembered that.
Yes, if you voted for something and you change your mind, you can't vote against something and then just be dragging the meeting down because you didn't like the outcome.
Right, but if you voted for it and you want to reconsider it then, but a person has to have voted for it in order to move to reconsider.
Yes, and that's a separate motion.
Yes.
So-
Oh, I am confused.
Yeah, I was going to
This
say,
is a vote.
let me be very clear.
Motion.
To reconsider it, be a motion.
Reconsideration's a motion.
So there,
So-
We've already voted.
We've already
Yeah.
voted on it.
You've already dispositioned this motion. You amended it to spend something else. Everyone took a final vote. You're now moving on to the next agenda item. Later in the evening, someone has a change of heart,
Yeah,
and that's when you want to reconsider.
yeah.
But,
Okay, the
yeah,
house.
you don't, once the final vote is over, then you move on.
so the picnic was for 500. We amended it to make 1,000. We all agreed to make it 1,000. We voted on the amendment, on the motion. As far as we know, the and I may be wrong, but as far as we know, we now are gonna have a picnic, then we're gonna spend $1,000 on it. And then later in the meeting, go, oh my God, I only wanna spend $750. I would have to make a motion to consider the amendment about the picnic.
Right,
Reconsider the
The
motion,
motion about the thing.
the motion that passed.
Right.
Because it passed as a motion.
right,
But if it passes as a motion, it becomes a reality.
right. and
Unless
that-
it votes to reconsider by somebody who voted for it. It's complicated.
Yeah.
This is all.
And how do you
Yeah.
say that? You
It's
say,
just-
I make a motion to.
I move to,
I-
never say I make. I move to.
Okay, okay. I move to reconsider the picnic motion.
I
Right.
to have the board reconsider, right?
Right. This is way in the weeds and you've never done this.
But now that we understand that we could, it's possible that we could.
Yes. And a majority of you would have to agree to it. So if the rest of the board thinks, no, we decided this,
We're
moving
done
on,
with
we're
it.
not,
Because,
we're not.
because it's a
reconsidering.
motion.
Yes.
That you're,
Yeah.
okay, I move. Now, what was the thing about, you could only make that motion if you,
Had voted on
Had
the
voted
prevailing side.
Yes. If you voted on the losing side, you can't bring it up again because
okay.
you've
No
already.
sour
been-
Because,
grapes.
because,
You were in the
You,
minority.
you can tweet about it though.
because.
And then what I have to tell the chair to do this in the formal way. And so the method of stating this 3 times is the golden standard for passing motions. And if you have debate in between, in the appropriate place, then it doesn't feel like she's saying the same thing 3 times in a row, because there's separation of stuff going on. So it'll make more sense when we put this stuff in its right order. So the last time that she states it is really, it has been moved and passed, it has been moved, it has been passed that we are spending $500 on a picnic. And that is to conclude the discussion, so everyone knows what the final form of the motion is, and then you move on to the next one.
So a person makes a motion, someone seconds it, and, well, you said 3 times that they're talking
Yep.
about,
So the first time, like you make a motion about the picnic,
Okay.
you second it, the chair says, there's been a motion on the floor to spend $500 on a picnic. That's to ensure that the chair has heard what you stated.
So that's the second time.
That's the first time.
First time, yeah.
But
So,
the chair says it.
okay, so when I make the motions, that's not the first
I'm
time?
not, well, what I said is the chair states it 3 times.
Okay,
So that's the first time.
okay.
And so then you're debating it, and the debate is over, and then the chair says, so the motion on the floor is to spend $500 on a picnic. All those in favor, well, would the clerk please call the roll? And so that was the second time. So you heard exactly what you're voting on.
Okay,
And the reason why this is important is it makes it very clear, and there's no confusion about what you're voting on. So you don't get, 10 minutes later going, oh crap, I meant to vote no on that, and I voted yes.
okay.
So it's just to make absolutely clear that everyone understands what you're voting on. And then the third time is after it's passed, then it's just a statement of what you just decided. So it's been passed, we've just passed a motion to spend $500 on a picnic.
Okay, so the chair states the motion 3 times, as it's made, before the vote and after the vote.
Yes.
Good, thanks.
Any questions on that? We are right on time. Oh, and we already talked about amendments. So, calling the question. This is, like I said earlier, this is where you are limiting people's ability to debate. And it's usually used when, like I said, when there's a sense that the room is ready to move on, and it is really an infringement on people's rights to be discussing things way beyond its value. You can stop that. You don't have to sit there. And this is why people hate meetings. Sometimes it's because these discussions go on endlessly and they drag out, and everyone just doesn't know how to stop it. But you can stop it by calling the question. And the question is really what the chair states on the second time. The motion before you, this is the question that is being called. The motion before you is that we spend $500 on a picnic. So when you utter the magic words, I call the question, what that first says is we have to take a vote to end debate. So the chair says, the question has been called, which means that we must take a vote to end debate. All those in favor of ending debate, please say aye. And then all those opposed to ending debate, please say no. And because there's 5 of you, it would take 4 of you to end debate.
So if we're talking about spending $500 for a picnic, in the discussion, I start talking about, I want cats at every picnic, no matter what, and I think the national parks are a wonderful thing, and did you ever visit Yosemite? Then somebody here that are in their right mind would say, call the question, right?
No, well,
All of you.
so, I mean, that would
Because
actually take a different
because
form.
my discussion is just going way off in the weeds.
Right, so that's what, someone go, point of order, I
Point of
believe
order.
that the discussion is not germane.
So that's different.
That's different than
That's
calling a
separate.
question.
But, yeah, but that limits debate as well.
If it's not germane, that's a core limitation that's built into parliamentary
But
procedure.
what's germane is quite a subjective consideration, isn't
It
it?
is, and there's a way to deal with that. And if we have time, we're gonna talk about it.
I'm eager to.
But if I said, well, I want $1,000 and vote on the amendment and it goes down and then I keep arguing, well, I still think it should be $1,000. And you should call for question.
Well,
Or
in that sense,
say-
she should gavel, she should bang the gavel and say, debate is ended on this, we are moving on.
Or another commissioner could say point of order.
Yes, you all can do point of order, you can all help the chair along, so if you think the chair should end this discussion, any of you could say, point of order, I believe this discussion is not germane.
Can I ask a question about the gavel?
Yes,
Because we don't really use a gavel, but we could use a gavel.
Yeah.
sure.
It's been used.
But I mean, is that something we want to consider?
It has a purpose.
And I'm just saying this, Sarah, and I don't mean any bad things towards you at all, but you do have a soft voice. And I'm just wondering if we have a gavel, like, okay, now it's time to vote, or, but if we look at it as a way, I don't know, how do you guys think
If you're
about
not
that?
obnoxious about it.
You're not
just
obnoxious about it, just, you know, I don't know, what do you guys think?
I used to do it every time we passed it.
Really?
Well, you're a fisherman. You
So, I
like
mean,
the
that's-
gavel.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fun thing of having that.
Yeah, it's like a milestone.
Okay.
Oh, no, not everybody thinks it's a great idea.
Just as long as you're not using it.
As long as the majority.
I don't remember if I did that or not.
You made
But
that-
it,
So-
but it was, but did you find it a helpful thing to have a gavel that people were used to hearing and stuff?
Well, during LNG, yes.
So, bringing it back
I
to
did
the
use it.
topic under discussion.
No, it isn't often used, no.
So did I make it clear what calling the question is and when it's used?
It ends debate.
Yes, and if debate is ended, and what you really want is for the chair to move on, you don't have to say call the question, because that would, if you actually do it, you have to trigger a vote. Yeah, you have to, and it just makes the meeting longer.
I think it's confusing because the chair says the pending question is, so that's that word again, question. So I think that's where it gets confusing. So please explain that.
The question is, how do you vote on this? The question is, do we pass this motion? That's the
Yeah.
question. The question is, will we spend $500 on a picnic? And so when they call for the question, what they're saying is, I think we should take the vote. We should state the motion and take the vote. And in order to do that, you have to end debate. So
Okay,
that's
so it's
why,
kind of the same thing.
yeah. And
But
so
the
that's
chair
when,
does
when
that.
someone says, call the question, then the chair says, the question's been called. All those in favor of ending debate, please say aye. All those opposed to ending debate, please say no.
For the housing study in
And
3 weeks. Blessings on you all. Do a good job.
Thank you.
And the chair announces the result. And then debate is ended, and then chairs often forget the second step. Then you have to go vote on the motion itself. So your first vote is to end debate, because you're curtailing people's rights.
Yep.
The second vote is on the motion.
But when the chair says the pending question is, that's
Mhm.
also ending debate because then you're going to vote on the motion.
Well, you're saying that
You don't
because
get
debate, usually because debate is ended.
Yeah, okay.
Because you want to give
Yes,
everyone an
everyone
opportunity
chance
to
to
express their
debate.
opinion
Yes.
and get everything off their chest.
So I call the question is to move it to a vote.
Yes.
But what's the point of order? Point of, you said when I was blabbing on about
Oh,
cats.
if you're going on about cats, and it's and the discussion is supposed to be on $500 for a picnic.
Right.
Someone can say, point of order, and the chair says, state your point, and then you say, I believe that the discussion on cats is not germane to the amendment. And then the chair will say, your point is well taken, we will move on.
So it's a polite way to say,
Shut up.
stay in the box.
Yeah.
Stay in-
But
okay.
some of us have different ideas about what's related, what's germane. and-
Okay,
and
let's
that's a
talk about
concern.
that. So, I think we have time. So, there's this thing called appeal the ruling of the chair. And it's not a bad thing. So sometimes chairs get all bent out of shape because someone has questioned the decision they made. But Roberts says, chairs really should appreciate this because it takes the decision out of their hands and moves it onto the body, right? So, point of order has been made that the discussion on the cats is out of order and that we need to move discussion. The chair says the point is well taken. Someone else says, and it could be the same person, says, I disagree, I think it is germane and I appeal the ruling of the chair.
Okay, so if I'm blabbing on about cats, and Pam says, point of order, I don't think that's germane, and Sarah goes, well, that is certainly not germane. But I'm thinking, I'm not done talking about cats, so I can say I appeal the ruling
of the chair.
of the chair, and then what happens?
So then, that triggers a little series of steps. So the first step is that the chair explains why she felt it wasn't germane. So the chair says, I ruled that way because the amendment
cats
is a
can't-
discussion on $500, and you're talking about cats, and so I believe it's not germane, and we really need to move on. And then everyone else has one opportunity to speak. And this is also stated in your rules, which is a restatement of what's in Robert's rules. So everyone else can weigh in on this, saying, I think the discussion of cats is really important. Someone else says, I think we need to stick to the $500. Everyone can speak once, and then the chair can speak one final time, saying, I'm still not convinced that this is germane, and so I'm sticking with my ruling. And then the chair takes a vote, and it's just a majority vote. So if a majority of you think that the chair was correct, the chair's decision is sustained. And if a majority thinks that the chair's ruling was incorrect, the chair's ruling is overturned, and you continue talking about cats.
Okay.
It's the coolest part of Robert's rules. And it takes the decision completely out of the chair's hand and puts it on the majority, which is a core principle of democracy.
So everybody speaks once.
For an appeal.
I got it. Say a little more about what it means, everybody speaks once. Everybody gets to say one sentence, everybody gets to say what they want to say. How does that?
Say what they want to say.
Because okay, so if I may add on to this. So we're talking about, I'm blabbing on about cats, right? And so someone says, please, point of order, we got to stop this. And when it goes to the appeal process, and when everybody gets to talk once, do I get to start talking about cats again and saying, explain, or does it start with the other?
If the ruling is overturned.
But once we appeal the ruling, you said everybody gets to talk once, which is what
No,
Leanne was talking about.
here's what I'm saying. If you appeal the ruling of the chair, everybody gets to say, and you as the person who cared about cats would get to say, I think this is germane because, it's.
But if I were to go on for another 20 minutes about why it's germane,
Start talking about cats again.
it would be horrible, because it's.
So then, the chair should gavel you because you're really not speaking to the topic. What this discussion is
Because
whether or not it's
someone
germane.
call her doctor.
Right, germane or
That's
not.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
And it should help, I know where I think, if it's tangential, is that right? You may think that it is germane, but the rest of the commission, or some of the commissioners, may not agree.
And so you take a vote and you find out. So it's really
I
simple.
think that's what you're talking
I have
That
a
has-
mind that makes connections.
Yeah.
And so for me, what may be germane is like, well, did you think of this because this connects to this and thus it's germane? Like, I wanted to hear what the appointees had to say about themselves and why they wanted to serve on the committee. For me, that's germane.
Mhm.
So your other question was, how long can you go on?
Yeah.
So in Robert's rules, it says 10 minutes is the longest you should talk.
It's a long time.
Hopefully you get it out in 10 minutes.
To
10
make her
minutes is a
appeal?
long time. So I could talk
So-
about how cats are germane for 10 minutes?
Yeah,
Don't get excited now.
yeah, hopefully,
Mark's looking forward to that.
hopefully you realize that you are pissing off your fellow commissioners by going on for 9 minutes when you could have said something in 30 seconds. So, just be judicious about it. You can pass a special rule that changes the length of time that you can speak. And so if 4 or 5 of you, because it would require a 2/3 majority, if you want to institute that kind of rule, you can do that. But it would take 4 out of 5 of you to vote.
In general and forever? I mean, is that?
If you want to make a rule, so you could say, I move that we amend the county rules and that people speak no more than 10 times for 3 minutes each time. And then you could debate that, and then you could pass it, and then it would be added to your set of rules, and then your chair would abide by that going forward.
Sweet
And
Jesus.
the clerk is gonna keep track of each person. 10 times.
And so, in debate or discussion, after it's seconded, the motion, how many times can each commissioner speak?
The Robert's Rule says twice for 10 minutes.
10 minutes total.
Yes. Now, you can suspend the rules, so if this is something that everyone is really excited about, like meters or something, you can say, I move that we suspend the rules so we can continue debate, and if a majority of you agree, you can debate until midnight if you want.
So here's the thing. I think communication is the most important attribute of organizations. And nobody wants to be bored, but if we don't talk about what needs to be talked about, if we can't or don't talk about what needs to be talked about, are we serving the purpose for which we were elected? So I hear a lot of talk about constraints and time limits and, can't and don't and shan'ts and all that. Nobody wants to waste time. On the other hand, if we don't actually debate issues that matter about Clatsop County, its citizens and its business, what are we doing sitting in the seat?
But 10 minutes is
yeah.
a long time, and if it's germane to the motion, isn't that sufficient?
And all it
We
takes is to...
don't know yet, because we haven't tried, pardon me, but we haven't tried this. I mean, we have been under a system where we have been gavelled down and, in my mind, railroaded through. So now we're looking at how do we operate when we can have a more full discussion, when we actually look at significant issues and have consideration of things that haven't been considered.
Right, so...
My short time on, a very abbreviated experience on here, we've talked about a lot of things, and we've had pretty simple agendas, but not a lot of, topics on there. And we spent 3.5 hours going through it, and I think the points can be made. I certainly don't want to abbreviate any or cut anybody's debate short, but I think the points can be made more succinctly than they've been made, and that's everybody. I just think that for the agendas we've had, there's no reason that we should be here for 3.5 hours. Just to me, and that's, I don't think it's abridging anybody's freedom of speech to try to do things a little more concise.
And like I said, if a majority wants to debate more, the majority can make that decision, and you can sit here as long as you like.
And there are going to be times we have to do controversial issues, and there are going to be some public hearings, and we'll have to spend that time.
I have 2 words for you: smart meters.
Indeed.
Well, exactly. Yeah, there's gonna be some.
So, peeling the ruling of the chair, clear? And you guys can call me if you want to go over this afterwards. If I miss some key point and you need clarification, I appealed the ruling of the chair twice in a meeting about a month ago. And it was like the first time this group had ever seen that done. And it was really, really dramatic.
And who won?
I did.
It's his story. Of course he won. He's gonna tell us.
So this issue of elections versus appointments has been boiling up. And so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because it's in Robert's Rules and it's also in how your motions have been presented. So does everyone understand the distinction between a motion and between an election and an appointment?
Of course. No, well, I'm not clear what you mean in this context.
An appointment is where the chair, you know, for instance, when your first meeting appointed you to a bunch of boards, that's an appointment. It's one person appointing something to something, right?
It's one person?
One person is authorized to make a.
Well, sometimes the whole board will make an appointment, though.
No.
On this one, the appointment is the chair.
So an appointment is when one person appoints something to something.
Okay.
An election is when more than one person votes on something. So even though they've been calling these appointments in the minutes, they're really elections in the way that they've been framed. Well, yeah, and we're gonna, let me talk about what the rules say about that a little bit later. But if this is a situation where the board gets to decide like who's on the budget committee, and we need to find out the parameters of the budget committee, because I don't know where they are.
They're in the statute, the budget law, ORSs.
Okay, so it looks like it's a state law.
As far as, well, I mean, are you referring to, like, past practice has been a person from each district on there, but there are certain things as far as who it can represent the budget committee that's in the statute. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, who makes the decision? Where is it written? Where is the rule written on who decides who sits on the budget committee and what the qualifications are?
In the statute. Well, yeah, it's in the statute.
So it's in the Oregon statute? Okay, so that's where the guidance is from that. So in that case where you have an election where the board gets to decide who's going to be on there, you follow a process of nominating an election. So what should happen is that the chair would say, okay, we have the budget, we have people to appoint, to elect to the budget committee, who would you like to nominate? And so everyone gets to nominate, and nominations do not require a second. So then you get to X number of names that have been nominated for the budget committee. And then the chair says, is there any further nominations? And when there's no more nominations, then the nominations are closed. And it takes a majority vote to reopen nominations if you need to do that later.
So, question for clarification, if you're making a nomination, do you need to make a nomination from the applicants, or they can just make a nomination?
It could be anybody, yeah. And when you vote, you can write on anybody. And they don't even have to be nominated according to Robert's rules, which it's kind of like throwing a vote away, but you can't do that.
I don't understand.
If there's 3 people nominated and Joe Johnson is not one of them, you could still vote for Joe Johnson, even though they weren't nominated. It's a quirk.
Like a write-in.
Yeah, you can do it right in.
How would that be stated?
You just write that on your ballot.
I see.
So then,
So they're all ballots, we're doing ballots for each.
you guys have a practice of doing ballots, so we assume that they're ballots.
Committee or for the budget committee or whatever?
We haven't done ballots in the
No.
past because we
No,
needed,
we-
it would have to be read anyways because it has to be public, how each commissioner voted.
Well, they're not secret ballots,
Yeah.
right? We did that for the chair
Oh,
and vice
yeah.
chair.
Yeah,
But that's the only time I think we've
Yeah.
done that.
okay.
So, we have a lot of appointments, looking at appointments on the
On this agenda.
agenda tonight, so, and there's been some discussion, because in our rules, it states that the chair makes the appointments
For
Right.
ad hoc committees.
Right.
to any ad hoc committee. So, would you speak to that?
Well, there's no allowance in the rules for standing committees. So the only thing left is an ad hoc committee. So my
So
interpretation of
every
what you guys are discussing tonight is an ad hoc committee. So yes, according to your rules, the chair makes those appointments.
So should we make a motion to add standing committees to our rules? Because our budget committee and the human advisory committee, those are standing
Yeah, we have
committees.
so many.
Yeah,
There's a bunch of.
So we just, as far as you know, we just don't have standing committee in our rules.
yes,
Okay, so we have an omission.
right. So I couldn't find standing committees listed anywhere. Now, you
Because I
talk
know
about-
the ad hoc is on there, but.
You have
Yes,
a,
that's-
your budget committee is referred to in your rules, which implies its existence. So that's how you handle ad hoc committees according to your rules. If this is so going back to the situation I was explaining, if this was an election, or like a budget committee where you do nominations, then you would vote on them after that. And the way the voting goes is that you have the nominations in order. So person A, person B, person C, person D. The chair would say, and however you do this is up to you. You can decide on how you want to do your voting. It just has to be public. And so you'd vote on person A, and then you'd vote on person B, and then you'd vote on person C. And if you're filling 3 positions, once 3 people have received a majority, then voting is over with because you've filled the 3 positions. If there's an unlimited number of positions, then you just keep voting, and then anyone that receives a majority gets on there. And the reason this is important is that sometimes you come across people that you personally feel is not appropriate to be on a committee, but just because there's 3 slots and 3 applicants doesn't mean they get an automatic slot. You have to receive a majority of votes to put that person on that committee.
You just added a very complex wrinkle to what we're doing, I think, tonight. Because we've got something very important to consider. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around what you're just saying about it and trying to figure out how we will operationalize it. And I'm not clear. So maybe I'm just not tracking well enough. But this is different than what we've done before. And so I would prefer that we be able to do it accurately, correctly. And I'm not sure that I'm able to do that right now.
Do you consider these ad hoc committees that we're doing tonight? So these will be appointments by the chair. And so what I've recommended to the chair is that she solicit feedback from the commissioners on who to appoint.
So we would then postpone the appointments
You do that.
until next time, and then the commissioners would give me feedback on the different people who have been stated for being on those committees.
But
Is
is,
that-
Yes.
but is that deliberating toward a decision and a violation of Handy if we do that? Because Handy says if we're deliberating toward a decision, we have to do it in public. And it is a,
Just providing feedback.
well,
Your rules state that the chair appoints them.
I got it. What I'm talking about is, do we do it in public or not? Because Handy has come in since the board rules went into place, and it says that we are required to operate in public, for the public to, I mean, you're seeing this at County College, we heard it, I
So
think
the
you
other
probably
option
got
would
it
be
too.
She would ask, does anybody have,
We,
during the meeting, and
Or
then
we
she
could-
would still make the appointment.
or we could do a work session or whatever, but a publicly noticed, publicly recorded meeting, available for public review, to avoid the Handy.
Is some of this the kind of sticky thing of, we're talking about Joe and John and Matthew, and we don't like Matthew, we don't want to be sitting up here
Yeah,
going,
we don't
I really don't
do
like
that.
Matthew, he doesn't like cats, and then we pile on Matt because he doesn't like cats. Is that what we're trying to avoid by giving the information offline? But then does that, what you're saying, does that then get in trouble
I
with
can
Andy?
confirm that's legal.
I don't know.
I tend to be very, because Handy is so weird, you can't have a serial quorum or it's illegal.
Right.
Right.
And so we don't want to do that. And frankly, the back and forth in community we don't want to be trashing people. We want to have reasonable criteria for evaluating our recommendations to the chair. So what criteria do we use that are, bless you, that are defensible and could be done in public, bless you twice, would be, well, I'm sorry, it just
So,
have it.
yeah, I think you guys should decide how you want to handle your feedback to the chair. That's kind of different than the topic of what we're discussing right now.
Yeah,
Well,
because it's dicey. That sounds dicey.
Ad hoc committees.
But I know we have applications from all these different individuals, so we have things in which to give you feedback on. But
Hopefully-
normally, what we would normally have done is, tonight, we would have just said, this is this committee, this is this committee. Correct? Isn't that what we had thought we were gonna do tonight?
Usually we have a motion that says, I move to appoint so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so,
Right.
and we're done
Right, and he's saying, we don't do that.
anymore. So
Right.
we need to do something different. And the question is, what do we do different that's still legal and good public policy?
Well, can we talk about it saying, I make a motion that we have the chair appoint these individuals? And then if we all pass that motion, and then
We don't
You can do it anyway, we don't need to provide anything back, right?
Pardon me.
This is just your
Yeah,
opportunity to say.
Yes, I mean, it'd be good to have some feedback if,
But, I mean, from what I understand, it's just saying you can make that, you're asking for feedback simply to try to engage the commission. That's something you do.
But the,
No, right.
but the
You're right.
commission should have a publicly defensible set of criteria for making recommendations to the chair. That's my point.
but is, so you're asking?
I sent an email to Heather, I don't know if she's
Yeah.
gonna just, if,
Okay,
you know,
yeah,
try
it'd
that.
be
I
good to
don't know
know
if she'll get back to me.
if that
Because
appointments are part of,
And it's,
yeah.
it's the operation of the body, so I would
It's
assume.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
think-
everything. I mean,
Well, it couldn't be everything, because, yeah, it couldn't be everything.
It's everything relating to something that becomes a decision.
well, we've
Couldn't
been
be
getting.
every single thing.
No,
There's gotta be-
but we've been getting trained on this.
Yeah.
That's the point. And what we're trying to do is to keep us out of the courtroom and out of legal expenses.
That's good.
But traditionally, what we have done is that we put the word out that we need people from the community to serve on these different committees. They give you applications, you guys look them over, and then there's a motion that's been put, and then it's been given to us, and we either go up or down on them in public and on the board.
We did the same thing. at Warrenton,
So
so.
you're suggesting the change is that we don't go through that the chair just simply looks at these applications and makes the judgment, or?
No,
Or just
the responsibility, according to the rules, for the appointment of ad hoc committees is the chair's.
Where is that in the rules? Because I really
Let me
don't
read them.
remember that. I'd like to hear that, yeah.
So, Rule 9.1, the board chair is assigned the authority to recommend the membership and formation of ad hoc committees and may refer items to the appropriate committee on approval of the board.
Okay, but that says board approval, and the
No, it
chair's
says
recommending.
refer items to the board,
Well,
but not the membership of the committees. So let me read it again.
Okay.
The board chair is assigned the authority to recommend the membership and formation of ad hoc committees and may refer items to the appropriate committee on the approval of the board.
So the chair establishes the committee, the membership of the committee, and then the board decides what the committee can hear, saying yes or no to what the chair is recommending be their purview. Is that it?
Well, I thought they did not do you a service by using the word may. And so it
Yeah.
says, and may refer items to the appropriate committee on the approval of the board.
That
So,
means you don't have to.
Yeah.
It's not really giving you any direction.
so if I was chair, I would do it. I would say, all those in favor of referring this to the committee, please say aye. But the point we're talking about is the membership, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so you're saying that Rule 9.1 of the board rules gives the chair the authority to create the membership of every
Ad hoc,
ad hoc committee, and all there is ad hoc committees, basically.
yes. So Rule 9.2, the board may form, this is something that I think is important for you guys to understand. So you can also form committees, right? So 9.2 says, the board may form ad hoc committees to deal with specific tasks within specific timeframes in order to make recommendations to the board. The board will establish membership criteria for the ad hoc committees on a case-by-case basis.
So if I want to do an ad hoc committee on including cats at every picnic, I personally can do that?
Yes.
Well, and how do we?
So you can make a motion to
You have to
form
make
an
a
ad hoc
motion and
committee.
everyone else has to.
And you'd have to get 2 more votes to make this happen.
But Larry, how do we decide which is which is the chair's purview and which is the board's purview?
This says that you, as a board member, can propose the creation of an ad hoc committee.
Well,
And it doesn't say anything about the membership.
9.3.
Correct.
So
this
I
seems.
think that's the
this-
difference.
This seems to be right for, for rewriting, review and rewriting, because this was a first draft on these rules, and so this is not, I mean, what do we want to do? I mean,
So these are the rules that have been in effect for years.
well, but they haven't operated that way.
Well, then they've been in violation of the rules.
Well, no
Thank you.
kidding, no kidding, there's been significant deviation along a variety of dimensions, but here's the thing. If we are rewriting rules now, so we can.
We're not
look-
rewriting rules
Well,
now.
not at this moment, but
aren't we in the process?
We are-
have rules.
we are in the
But we
process
haven't
of,
done it.
we have not yet.
Finalized them.
We haven't finalized the rewrites of the board, but we are involved in that process. That's my
Cool.
point about now, okay.
Okay.
So, we have a past body of practice. The charter says that the chair has the authority to set the agenda, and that's really all the charter says. So if the board rules are saying something very different from that, I wonder if that rule violates the spirit of the charter, if not the letter of it. So that's an issue that I view as, you might consider it tangential, but for me, it's extremely relevant, because what we're looking at is our public involvement, how it actually operates. And do we want to give the chair the authority and responsibility to determine how that functions? Because that's the question I think we're dealing with here.
So if it's an issue of interpretation, then this is where you can appeal the ruling of the chair. So you do point of order, Madam Chair, I believe, make a ruling on this, and then the chair makes a ruling, and if you're not in agreement, then you appeal.
What would I?
I wasn't quite tracking what you're saying, but I thought you said that there was something in the rules that's in conflict with the charter.
Well, giving the chair the authority to establish the composition of every ad hoc committee. The charter doesn't say that.
Right, the rule does.
The rule does, and so it seems to me that maybe the rule is not congruent with the charter in that regard.
It could be, and so a majority, you can change it.
Okay.
So when you looked at this and this
Including the
particular
chair.
thing, how does this jive with Robert's Rules of Order? Are there discrepancies between how
No.
Robert's, there isn't? So
No.
this is pretty accurate for Robert's
Yeah,
Rules of
what
Order.
Robert says on the committees is there's several ways in which you can appoint members, and these are all valid options. And so what Roberts would really like you to do is make standing rules that govern this for your processes.
So, and what you said before is that we have an omission about standing committees. And then maybe that's something that we could look at is, do we want to add standing committees to our board rules?
Yes,
And if we did or add standing committees, some of these committees that are now considered ad hoc would actually become standing committees?
if you decide to, yeah.
Like
could
you
do
made
some
an ordinance saying that or not the budget, because that one is a standing committee, the tourism promotion, because they meet every year, if you wanted to make them a standing committee rather than just an ad hoc committee.
And ad hoc implies that someone gets appointed and they do the work till the work's done and then they're gone.
Right.
The
But
committee
The
themselves.
committee.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
standing committee, it's ongoing. It's
Yes.
ongoing. So, one of the issues that I have is that these appointments that we're looking at tonight, they seem like it's important to get this going. So how do we handle what's on board for tonight?
Well, the
Can we
motions that have
appeal?
been proposed are not valid. And if I were chair, I would rule them as not valid.
Because according to the rules, she should be appointing and we shouldn't be doing a motion.
Right,
It's not that we don't need those people in those positions.
right,
It's how do we get those people in those positions according to our rules?
right.
Can we ask Gail to weigh in on this?
I'm not parliamentarian.
No, but how, I mean,
So,
Good
I mean,
answer, Gail.
You can read the rules, I mean, you gotta follow the rules,
Yeah.
unless you wanna suspend them.
Can the chair, hold them? What's that?
Hold them tonight.
Oh, yes, or can she just make the appointments
She could.
Because didn't everybody that applied, are they?
Hmm.
No, okay. We did invite all the applicants.
Come.
Oh, they were invited, and not, they
Well,
were
for-
invited.
Yes, I did tell them that you would be.
No, I mean.
Okay, so I'm
So,
getting confused.
there's-
with-
Oh, no.
They're
They're-
invited
She
tonight,
invited
too.
them tonight to
Oh,
our
oh,
meeting.
oh.
So the party's on for tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Just trying to track different conversations. Okay. So the issue before us is whether or not there's any congruence or lack of congruence between the charter and the rules. The rule in effect at this moment is that the chair appoints the membership of every committee.
Ad hoc.
Because, well, no, because the only committees we have are ad hoc. So that means every committee, the chair does it. Is that what you want to do, or do you want to suspend the rules, which is what you said was the option in this
Right.
matter?
And that's something we should debate in the meeting.
But
Right.
if we have a committee that is either statutorily required or in ordinance is required, then that is considered a standing committee and not an ad hoc committee. Is that correct?
But the rules
But
don't
there's
address
nothing
it. The rules are
addressing it.
silent on it.
So we need to have that.
Right, so where the ambiguity exists, the chair makes a ruling, and she can ask the parliamentarian for advice, and I can give my advice, but she is the one that makes the ruling. And how stuff's interpreted.
Your dishes, your dollies, your rules. That's what my friend
So
used
yeah,
to say.
if you guys want to clean up the rules,
Oh,
that's certainly a
yeah.
discussion we can have, if you
Yeah.
want to have my help or not. So the third one is 9.3, also on page 21, appointment of ad hoc committee members. The board chair will appoint members of the ad hoc committees. The board chair will designate the ad hoc committee's chair and vice chair. Membership on the committees will be appointed as needed to advise the board on specific programs or projects. Members will continue to serve until their mission is accomplished or they are replaced or reappointed.
So, would it be appropriate if I said, unless there is objection to any of these people being appointed, I will appoint them tonight. And if there's an objection or something needs to be discussed further, then we will postpone until next time. Is that appropriate?
What is it you're trying to achieve?
Moving it along, getting the people appointed, but I also care what my fellow commissioners say if there's an objection. So just getting it done. Well, then, we don't even have to do that in the meeting. Is that right? Because we don't have to have a motion?
Right.
You don't have to have a motion. I would think that you would announce, whatever process you follow, you announce the appointments in a meeting, so it becomes part of the record.
Okay,
But how you get there is your decision.
okay. So maybe between now and when the meeting starts, you can tell me if there's an objection.
27 minutes
We've all
or 37
read
minutes.
the applications.
So decorum, I made some notes about decorum. So in the charter, it says the chairperson shall preside over meetings of the board, have the authority to preserve order at board meetings, and enforce the rules of the board. So that's the chair's responsibility. In your rules, it states, and this is on page 18, 7.2, the board chair will preserve order and decorum, may speak to the points of order in preference to other members, and will decide all questions of order. And then 7.3, address the board chair. When any board member is about to speak in debate or deliver an item to the board members should respectfully address the board chair or presiding officer. The board member should confine the remarks to the question under consideration and avoid addressing personalities. So that's the whole idea of talking about ideas and not people, and running all discussion to the chair.
So raising hand and saying,
And having you recognize it.
Madam Chair, or, yeah.
Yeah, if your eyesight is poor and you don't, see the people in the end, it's okay for them to, be more.
And do they wait, do they have to wait?
Until you're recognized?
Yeah.
Yes, they should. And that prevents people from talking over each other.
So what if the chair is the one violating decorum, not
You say point of order.
But you know what I mean?
No, but
So,
I do.
you know, then you would say, you can call a point of order on the chair as well. So point of order, I believe the remark is out of order. And it
So
might feel
anybody can call a
uncomfortable,
point of order.
but, you know, you all can do that. Everyone shares that responsibility. Page 20, Rule 8.1, enforcement of the board rules. The board chair or presiding officer will enforce the board rules. In addition, the board chair or presiding officer has the authority to preserve decorum and will determine all points of order, subject to the right of any board member to appeal to the board, and that's the appeal process that we talked about. The board or presiding officer will enforce order, prevent attacks on personalities or the impugning of members' motives, and keep those in debate to the question under discussion. That's the whole germaneness business.
And this is in the rules.
Yes. And then 8.2, board members will preserve order and decorum during board meetings and will not by conversation or other action delay or interrupt the proceedings or refuse to obey the orders of the board chair or presiding officer and board rules. Board members will, when addressing staff or board members, confine themselves to questions or issues that are under discussion, will not engage in personal attacks, will not impugn the motives of any speaker, and will at all times, in session or otherwise, which is very interesting, with the otherwise part,
In session or
Yeah.
otherwise.
conduct themselves in a manner appropriate to the dignity of the office. Board members will not attack the knowledge, skills, abilities, and personalities or impugn county staff members' motives in board or at county meetings. The board members may discuss or suggest anything with the county manager related to county business.
So that covers, it goes to staff, it goes to everybody, as long as we hold this office, it extends to everybody that we have contact with the county.
And apparently if you go to the wet dog, it covers that too.
And it should also, seems like it should also be that also applies to staff members towards us.
Yeah, but they're employees and there's
Right.
HR
I
policies
am, yeah.
that govern their behavior.
Yeah, so
That's
that's
a whole different
separate.
process.
These are our rules, this is what we need to pay attention to.
That would be the board notifying the county manager. that
Well, when
there's
it's the
an
county
issue.
manager that's doing it, that's what the problem was last
Well,
year.
get that under control.
He's
Well,
gone now.
and there was a letter that came from a constituent about the board chair on severe violations of decorum. That has happened.
Indeed. So we talked about point of orders already. Is there any further information? So in this handout I gave you, there's like things that you probably never used in meetings. And in our next session, we can talk about, do a deep dive into some of this stuff.
We did, I don't know, we have soup and salad. I don't know if you want to take a couple minutes, if there's time for them to grab something before they go into
Oh.
their 6 o'clock meeting. I just want to say that because.
Sure, we've been going
we
on
did
for an hour
bring
and a half.
food. Yeah,
Is
and
there
you
any
guys are gonna.
Questions in the last 3 minutes?
Well, just looking at this length of meeting, let's look at that. Is that what you're referring to, that we were gonna look? through?
That was actually on there because it was under the agenda and that was the agenda piece, but I thought you guys might want to read through it.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
It's on page 8.
Here. Oh, okay, thank you.
And
You're gonna assign a time limit.
you could, and you can set a time for adjourning the meeting, which has its pros and cons. So you could say, you know, you adjourn at 9 o'clock, and then anything that you don't get to by 9 o'clock gets shoved into unfinished business for the next meeting. Usually, you don't do that because there's stuff's on the agenda for a reason, and you really need to get through it. And you can always make a motion to adjourn if you need to stop.
Go ahead.
That raises another question. What is the procedure for leaving, for one of us leaving the meeting early? How do we, what do we say, what do we do? How do we?
You would just say, ask to be excused.
Okay.
And as long as you don't take the meeting down below quorum, it's not that big of a deal. If you only have 3 people here and you walk away, then you no longer have a quorum and you can no longer do business.
Right.
So it would be a big deal if there were only 3 of you.
So the other day, my legs were really bothering me, so I really had a hard time sitting. Then I felt like I was interrupting the meeting to say, I just don't want people to think that I'm being a weirdo standing. So that was kind of tricky to do, you know, to say, I'm still in the meeting, but I'm standing. Can I just get up and do that without people, without asking permission, or?
This is America, and you can do that.
Okay.
And bio breaks too?
Well, yeah, there should
Yeah.
be recesses.
Yeah, we're not in prison.
Well,
And you can move to recess.
Yeah.
I would just rather step off and.
That would be, but, you know, if you are needing a recess, it's probably an indicator that others as
Yeah.
well.
So you can,
Sometimes things are so exciting that you don't want to break, and you forget that you need a recess. So it's okay. It is
Three
within your
kids,
power to move for a
74 years
recess.
old, sometimes a little more frequency is required. Sorry, too much information for you, but still.
so if someone asks for a recess, does that have to be voted on? Or can you just say, we have a 2-minute recess?
You can do a recess. So, point of privilege, Madam Chair, may we have a 5-minute recess? And the chair says, of course.
Even a 3-minute recess, I think we should actually get up and move around a little bit more than we do, because we have long meetings, and I don't think it's, my brain doesn't work so well after sitting for 2.5 hours.
Thank you.
But it's a
So-
point of privilege, and, you know, if the chair wants to keep going, you can still get the majority to decide that you're gonna have a recess.
I don't want to make a big deal of it. It's a little embarrassing.
Well, if I can remember, I'll ask for recess.
I'm a little
You
worried
have a
about,
really nice chair, and I think that if you suggested it would be called on.
I'm a little worried about, I don't want, if we invited these folks that we are thinking about appointing to committees tonight, I don't want to embarrass them by having some big,
Yeah.
doohickey thing here, so
That's why I
maybe.
say, if you want to talk to me between now and the meeting, and if you do have any problems, if you don't have problems, then they'll just be appointed.
Well,
If you
we
do,
could, but
then-
we could also
So, it
tonight.
sounds like we're done with the
Oh,
training session.
Are we? We're breaking down?
Yes.
It's
And,
been an
and
hour
some
and a
are
half.
moving to other topics, so,
I'm ready.
so, yeah, and so,
so we're, oh, yes, okay, the work session is adjourned, and help yourself to.
Yes, please get some soup and salad.
Um,
Commissioners only, sorry, folks.
Did you want to ask?
I just don't want, I would like to have it go smoothly tonight. I don't want to,
Yeah.
everybody feel like they're not welcome or